Welcome to another installment of the Practical Operational Project Management video series. This series is intended to get operational teams who are mainly focused on service delivery or incident resolution up and running using the project management features of Team Dynamics. Look, for many teams, a dedicated project manager role is a luxury that can't be afforded. And even though this particular video is geared towards those in the team who will be creating projects, which Team Dynamics calls the manager, it isn't a lesson in project management fundamentals. But we can certainly apply the spirit of project management in a way that is lightweight and useful for teams working in a fast-paced environment. Hold on. Before we get into any tool or mouse clicking, let's pause a brief moment and make certain we have both the understanding and the information we need to even start. So number one, is this, the project you have in your head, really a project at all? Number two, maybe we do some planning and have some conversations with the team and the resources as to what the project might look like. And three, when both of those conditions are satisfied, then we can go ahead and create the project because we're committing to doing the work. Is this a project? On an operational team, most work comes in the form of tickets, be it service requests or incidents or changes. On the other end of the spectrum, there are big projects, but small p projects can be much closer to the middle. Not an easy apple and oranges comparison sometimes. So let's go over a few questions that might help determine whether you should consider creating a project in the first place. Number one, how many resources will be contributing to the effort? Anything more than one or two people may be better served by a card wall than a ticketing feed. Number two, how long? If the volume of work is expected to occur over a longer period of time, as may be measured in calendar days, especially if there are large gaps in between events, like as if you're waiting for another event to occur, then a project may be a good fit. Number three, how complex? If there are a number of moving pieces or tasks that need to be done in parallel by different people, a card wall would be a good way to make sense of it all, as opposed to looking at a ticketing feed. Number four, a service request or a change. Often tickets come into the team which will result in a large volume of work, and sometimes we can perform this work using the ticketing as the information repository. Work is done, what was done, ticket result. However, another way you can look at it is that the incoming service request is really a project request in a different form. Most projects should involve one or more changes as expressed in a change ticket. But straightforward changes, even if they involve a decent amount of effort, can be documented and tracked through the change ticket itself, and maybe you don't need a project. Number five, are SLAs affected? Not all teams or services will have service level agreements. But if you do receive a service request for a service that you perform or offer, and the volume of work required to resolve it would be fairly large, then maybe a project is a better fit. For example, you have a service in which you aim for a 3-day resolve time, and you receive a request to upgrade an application to version 2.0. And to accomplish this, you need to create a whole new server architecture and networking setup, and this may take weeks of refactoring. Keeping a ticket would skew your metrics, and you're probably better to close this ticket in favor of creating a project. Now, this is not an exhaustive list because determining what makes sense to be a project versus a ticket is more of an art or a philosophy than it is a science. But at least having the discussion with your team or even with yourself about what makes sense for you and having the tool set available to you, you can make the best choice for your team. The next step in our preparation, and possibly the most important step, is identifying exactly what it is we're doing. What is the purpose of the project? Common sense sometimes isn't common, and even if it is, we often have a different interpretation of what we're doing unless we agree before the project even starts what it is done looks like. So number two, what is being done? Another way to think about this is what tasks need to be accomplished or goals need to be achieved for the project to be considered done. And number three, which is often overlooked, is what is not being done. Sometimes projects have a habit of existing forever because something new gets added to the table. We call this scope creep, but often without a clear understanding of when you're done, you tend to keep going until you just stop doing it, and projects never really get finished. So let's have an idea of what we're not doing so that we're all clear. The next step in preparation is determining who will work on the project. In a big P project, the sponsor is the person providing financial or strategic direction to the project. In an operational context, however, the sponsor is really just the point person that will speak to the success of the project or really knows the most about it. Number two is, who are the managers? The managers in an operational context isn't necessarily the project manager, although there should be some project manager-like duties, but really the person who is going to be an expert in the team dynamics interface and potentially performing the project setup and maybe some basic maintenance tasks to keep the project running. Number three is, who are the resources? And the resources, especially in an operational project context, are the ones that are doing the day-to-day work, or the week-to-week work, or those that are contributing to the various tasks that are identified on the project. The final thing we'll consider in our preparation efforts is how. How are we going to work on this project? Are we going to work on this project in informal groups? I mean, in an operational context, a lot of the time the people working on projects are sitting right next to each other. So do we really need a weekly meeting on this project, or can we just make do with talking to each other whenever things occur? Or number two, a more formal team approach. So perhaps we have several projects happening on the team and we want a weekly meeting to do project updates. We may go down a list of all the projects, but that's how we're going to track the success of the project. Number three, if it's a multi-team approach where things are getting a little more complicated, then maybe we want a dedicated meeting to talk about the specifics of the project, maybe the issues or new project tasks that are being identified. And number four is progress updates. How actively do we want to report on this project? Is this something we want to bring everyone's attention to on a regular basis, or can we work on this in isolation and the project gets created, worked on, and done without much fanfare? Many teams may approach projects differently, and one team may approach many projects differently. But the thing is, don't overcomplicate this. Use the tool set for what it is and make the best of it to get the work done that you need to get done. Okay, we've thought about whether or not what we're about to do is going to be or should be a project. And number two, we've done a little bit of due diligence and preparation to think about what the project is actually going to entail, how long it's going to take, and who's going to work on it. Let's get to the good stuff, or off to the races, so to speak. Let's create the project in Team Dynamics and let's get going. On this video, I'm going to illustrate the features of the project management tool that are of most use to teams that are running lightweight project management, and not necessarily showing off all of the tool set. That's more advanced. But let's get started. And the first thing you need to do, if you don't already have it on your dashboard, is to open the Projects app. And you do that by clicking on the waffle icon and going through your list of applications that you have access to, which will be different from what you see here, and then selecting projects. Now, once the project tab is opened, you will likely have a blank dashboard if you've never run projects before. You won't have the dashboard that I have here because I've created that elsewhere. But what you can do is click on the New and Project. And if you don't have project here as an option, it's because you don't have the permissions assigned to you to be able to be a project manager. You may need to acquire those elsewhere. But for now, let's click on project. And that will bring up the new project window. And this is a window in which we can fill out all of the details relating to this project, as you would expect. But really, because we've done our pre-work, we already really know what to put in here. So the project's going to have a name. I'm going to call this Demo Project 6 now, I believe we're up to. The type of project is likely already defined, and in your environment will be something that you just know what to use. It's important because a lot of things are tied to it, a lot of the reporting. But for now, I'm going to pick the type that I've already defined previously. The department field is really the department that you're in. And that will be different for everybody. The start date. The start date, I suppose, is normally the day that you're creating the project, but doesn't necessarily have to be. In this case, I'm going to start this project on Monday, December the 4th. And the end date, which is the time I'm going to be finishing the project, allegedly, is an estimation of when the project should be done. The description field is really where you're putting the details of what this project is about. And you can use any number of formats that you wish. It'll make sense depending on which team that you're on. What I would suggest is giving a brief description of the project, which you really already know what you're doing. So I'm going to show off the project tool. That's the reason this exists. I also suggest you take the opportunity to tell those who are looking at this what is in scope for this project. And for this, I'm going to show off the features. And also very important, what's out of scope? Wash my car. Time and expenses. This is an estimation of the number of hours. Now, of course, this is very, very hard to do, even with the best projects. And really, what you're looking for is an easy way to see, is this like a small project or a medium project or a really big project? A small project maybe is 10 hours, a medium project is 100 hours, and so on. So I'm just going to estimate that right now we've got 150 hours. This can always be updated later. Everything else we're going to skip, and we're going to open up the Advanced tab. And hopefully you've got a project template already created for you. A project template will turn on or off many of the features and set all of the settings to their defaults, as well as apply any pre-created plans. And this can really save you a lot of time. You can always change everything after the fact. You're not restricted to what the template provides. It's just a quick way to start a project. The sponsor is the individual who can speak to the strategy and the decisions of the project or know the most about the project, not necessarily the project manager in the team dynamics context or a resource on the project. So in this case, I'm just going to choose me. The service is from your service catalog. You don't require a service, but when you're later reporting on the number of projects you've run against a service, sometimes it's nice to have this. So I'm going to put that in here. Service offering, same thing. You can get further down into the weeds of what you're running a project on. Portfolio. A portfolio is already created in the portfolio management tool. And this is a way to group projects by teams. You can be part of a number of portfolios in this project. So in this case, I've already got one defined. And I'm going to insert this one here. This makes reporting a lot easier down the road. And everything else that we have here is really optional. The classification you can use if that's important to you. These values may change over time. They're global to team dynamics, so they're used by all teams across all departments. Priority is going to be relative to your area. The status of the project, well, we're just creating it, so let's keep it as new. And the health, which is what you'll see in the dashboard, depending on the dashboard that you've got. It isn't set right now because we haven't started the project, but it's like a traffic light system. And requirements is a place where you can put the prerequisites this project needs to have in place in order to start. Most times I think this is going to be blank. So let's save that project. And now we get the window where we can start changing and adding things that make sense. The first thing we're going to do is look at the settings section, and we can cruise over all of these items here to make sure they're appropriate for our particular project. These were all set by the template. You can see that the particular template that I have turns off a lot of the features that I don't plan on using because we're running a lightweight project, as well as the project sections. only one is turned on. And also important for reporting on the time spent on project tasks, we have the time types set up already. So it's a nice convenient way to get going quickly. So every project really needs the resources to work on the project, and those are the people. By default, because I'm the manager, I'm the one entering the form when creating the project, I'm assigned the role manager. I need to add people by going through the add button. Then I can click next. Then I click next. We can save. Let's add one more user. This time I'll unselect notify resources. People are going to wonder why they're getting added to a project they've never heard of, but let's save that. So on this project now, I've got 3 people working on it. If those people were to go to their dashboards, they would see this project now on their dashboard. I can also take the opportunity now to look at the project managers. So I can either change the manager to someone other than myself who created this project, or I can nominate additional managers who will get all of the project management permissions for this project. And that's it. Now we have these 3 people working on this project. You can continue on with any number of resources. Next, we're going to look at the plans. And this is where the meat of all project management is really taking place. The template that I used to create this project had a card wall already defined. You can also create new card walls if you'd like. They can be card wall type or they can be a waterfall type. But for now, let's go to the default action items card wall that was created as part of the template. And I've got some predefined columns here on this Kanban board. And you can modify this to suit the project management approach that you're using for this. Maybe you'll want any number of different columns, or you want to modify what's currently here. For example, instead of having a new column, I'm going to change this and call this proposed, where team resources can add tasks for discussion. So maybe we want a column in which tasks can be created by project resources, and they're not sure if they should be tasks that are actually assigned, but they're just more ideas. So let's do that, and then we can maybe change the order of the cards so it makes more sense. And let's even add an item to the backlog. Let's call this host a kickoff meeting. And when we do that, we can start assigning resources. I'm not going to notify them. And I'm going to put a due date and maybe a 1-hour meeting times 3 people. That's 3 different hours. And let's save that. So now we've got a task that's already created. I'm actually going to move that to the in process column because we're going to host a kickoff meeting and I've already committed to creating that meeting in Microsoft Teams or Outlook. And we're ready to go. As the card wall builds up over time, you can look at some of the resource and totals tabs to go over at a glance statistics for this card wall. But that's really it. So I'm going to close out of this. And now I'm going to get back to the window that I still have open here. And I'm going to go to the announcements feature. And I'm going to create a new announcement. Ready to work on this project. Kick-off meeting is impending. Check your calendars. An announcement has a expiration date when this doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm going to save that. And finally, let's do a quick status update. And status updates are something that we'll look at in a future video as part of the management of a project. But technically, I think I've started this project now because I've done some resource assignments, so we're in progress. We're not behind schedule, and we're 1% complete because it's better than 0. Green kickoff is scheduled. I can choose to notify people on the project. I'm not going to do that in this case. But now every time you come in, the status will be here, and you can get a quick look at what is the current status of the project. If I refresh my dashboard, I now have the project that I just created here. It hasn't started yet technically, but it's scheduled to be started, and that's the approximate time frame it's going to be in. You can see as you start to create more and more projects, you can get a quick understanding of what type of work is happening in parallel, which is one of the reasons we run projects through this tool in the first place. We have the announcements that we've created, and depending on your dashboard, you'll have a quick color view of the status of each project. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I hope that helps.